I felt myself becoming a bit concerned, because I don't want to give the impression that, Africa in exhibitions and curating is the realm of challenges that need to be overcome.
Yeah. What is most important for the success of the show? The work or the artist?
Well, that's a hard one to say. Yes or no.
In this episode, we speak with Antawan I. Byrd. Antawan is an assistant professor in the Department of Art History at Northwestern University. He is also a curator of photography at the Art Institute of Chicago. Welcome, Antawan. Welcome to this episode.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you guys.
So let's start with the exhibitions you've been working on. I know there are some very relevant and massive projects you've been, working on. I want you to give us highlights of what you are doing, especially the one. I know you are working with the Art Institute of Chicago now for an exhibition. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. First, thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I would say, currently, I'm working on an exhibition on Pan-Africanism. It's an exhibition that I began to work on around 2019, and it's a collaborative project that I'm working on with some really, really great people. Antawan I, who's a professor of political science at the University of Chicago, Matt Wachowski, who's the chair of photography and media at the Art Institute, and Elvira Denganiose, who's the director of the Museum for Contemporary Art in Barcelona. So the four of us have been working on this pretty ambitious exhibition. The exhibition seeks to survey art and cultural practices aligned with Pan-Africanism from the 1920s up until the present. And so for the exhibition, we've done an enormous amount of travel over the past 4 years. The exhibition will be responsive to art produced in Africa, in North America, in parts of the Caribbean, and parts of Europe. And essentially, we're interested in producing a survey. Pan-Africanism is a theory that has gained widespread prominence in the late 19th century, especially in 1900 during the first Pan-African Conference. And, the term has been with us, and it's motivated so many different political and social and cultural movements, but it's yet to be analyzed through a sort of comprehensive exhibition. And so this is the project that we will bring to Chicago at the Art Institute in December of this year, of 2024, and then it will subsequently travel to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Barcelona, and then also in the Pompidou Museum, Canal Pompidou in Brussels. And so it's been a really, really exciting project. Intense, labor intensive in terms of work. But one of the nice things about being able to work on a show like this is being able to integrate it into teaching. And so, as you know, here at Northwestern, I taught a course on Pan-Africanism that was open to senior undergraduates, but also grad students. And that course provided me with an opportunity, and students with an opportunity, to work through some of the key themes of the exhibition.
Yeah, I do have a question coming up. I know you also have more questions for Antawan, but if I can just ask this, why is this, I think there are two actually. So firstly is, why is this timely now? Because I'd like to think that some of the exhibitions that happen at, bigger institutions take a long-term planning process, right?
Yes.
And so I'm sure it's not something that you thought about in January and you're executing it right now. How long has this process started or gone on for? And when did this start, for example? And why is it timely now?
Those are both great questions. So the kernel of the project, it began with some conversations between myself and Matt Wachowski at the Art Institute. in 2019. And so that was the initial sort of kernel moment. And then we brought on Adam Getachew and Elvira Dengani-Ose to work with us as well. And so since then, we've been a team of 4, writing together, thinking together, traveling together. And it's been a really great collaborative, dialogic experience. But to your other question about why now, that's a really good question. The ideas around Pan-Africanism has manifested in a range of different terms. So world making, Black internationalism, Black transnationalism, globalization. I mean, these are sort of cognate terms that speak to the sort of geographic sort of dispersal of Pan-Africanism. And those concepts have been influential to a number of precedent exhibitions. So the Short Century, an exhibition, really, really important exhibition curated by Okpa-Iroha in 2001. So that exhibition, it made references to Pan-Africanism, but it essentially presented Pan-Africanism as an Anglophone equivalent to Francophone negritude, right? And that approach isn't necessarily wrong, but in the exhibition that we're developing, we're understanding negritude as one branch of Pan-Africanism overall. So Pan-Africanism being a kind of umbrella term. But subsequent to the Short Century, there was Journeys Through the Black Atlantic, Afro-Modern, an exhibition that opened in 2011 at the Tate, Liverpool, which also dealt with some ideas around Pan-Africanism, but it hinged primarily on the concept of Black internationalism. So rather than using the term Pan-Africanism, Black internationalism became a sort of synonym. And for us, in many ways, the exhibition that we're doing has been made possible by those precedent projects, right? So because those projects did a certain kind of work, Okwe show really, really owning in on the way that culture was responsive to decolonization and political independence. That means that for our show, we don't have to tackle that in as much depth because it's already been addressed.
Do you reference it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So definitely there's a lot of art that speaks to the mid-20th century decolonization. But we, in some ways, felt that, we don't have to try to be as comprehensive because precedent exhibitions have done that work. And so I guess when I think about why now, it's largely because there has been a number of exhibitions since 1991 up until now that have addressed different aspects of transnational cultural production in Africa and the African diaspora. And so now this exhibition is an opportunity to, in many ways, build on all of those models and to frame it in a broader way.
How would you approach curating a show to be effective as an educational program as well? Is that something, because there are a lot of commercial galleries that are springing up, for example, like in Africa, and I don't think that the goal is to educate the public. I think it's more to appeal to like collectors.
Sure.
Which, is successful for them. And sometimes, you might see like a nice photograph of like 10 students in the at the exhibition, and that's about it. But how would you approach that? What would be your guide on how to go about curating a show, whether in a setting where there is a lot of funding and a lot of like network for and infrastructure for artistic expression, and in other parts where there isn't so much, like, because you've had experiences in both aspects, right? So
I think you're absolutely right that, oftentimes when, I go to visit exhibitions of contemporary art on the continent, whether it's in Dakar or Lagos or Cairo, Joburg, oftentimes those exhibitions tend to be calibrated toward two types of audiences. And those two audiences overlap a lot. One is the collector audience, and then the other is, let's say, the art world, social elite, well-educated audiences. And the reason why I describe it in that way is because either the show is designed to sell, so it's a commercial show, or it's designed to be representative of the best approaches to contemporary art on a global scale, right? And so the reason why I think that's important to note is because oftentimes, some of the language that's used in wall labels, etc., they'll use terms that one could readily find in a gallery in New York or in London, right? And I think that there's some merit there because it's essentially saying that, audiences in Africa are as deserving of the same level of engagement and critical thought as audiences in Paris or Berlin or Chicago. And I think that's important in many ways. But when it comes to the question of education, I think that the person or persons responsible for organizing the exhibition has to be creative. How do you bring in a group of school children who, aren't familiar with, let's say, installation art, right? Which is something kind of global contemporary art vernacular installation practices. How do you describe that to, kids whose frame of reference for art is drawing and painting and sculpture? And so I think, one way to do it is to develop a set of resources that can be given to the school teachers. That way they can introduce these ideas with students beforehand and then bring them to the space of the exhibition and have a kind of conversation. But I feel like that level of engagement, it has to be intentional, it has to be sincere, and it has to be sustainable. Right, you can't, somehow, develop a familiarity or a comfort with contemporary art just by, encountering it one day out of a year, right? It's something that should be embedded in the curriculum. And I think, as I describe it, part of it is, I think, the responsibility of the curator or the gallerist, but I also think it's as much the responsibility of school teachers and whoever's setting the curriculum at this school, but also parents. I think that, school teachers, they can integrate art into the curriculum, but also parents can integrate art into, leisure. So I feel like in the best case, it would be a kind of holistic, sort of multi-pronged, multifaceted approach.
That sounds brilliant, actually. I guess it just calls for more effort on the part of this
all stakeholders.
Exactly. All stakeholders.
It's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. And
that would create more cross collaboration, between institutions and art institutions and academic institutions, primarily academic institutions. Because, for example, you're curating something at the Art Institute, which is an institute, and it also has the school of the Art Institute, right? And then there is ASICO, which came out of an art organization, Center for Contemporary Art Lagos. So, it's has to happen side by side.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things about ASICO, which is different from most sort of platforms, is that it was designed to be roving, right? So it meant that rather than being, fixed in Lagos or fixed in, Abidjan or fixed in Dakar, each edition moves around. And I think that's brilliant, in part because curators, they move around, artists move around, right? And so in a sense, you're tethering a kind of pedagogical experience to the professional experience of art making or curating. And it begins to concretize this sense of mobility as part of this sort of ecosystem. And I think that has many advantages, but it also has disadvantages. Because if you had one program in one city for 6 years, then you're developing an infrastructure in that particular place. Whereas with ASICO, the way that it moved around, essentially it's the people who are grounded in those host cities that take the insight and experiences from the program and carry it forward. And so I think, these different models, what's great about them is that there's a degree of elasticity and flexibility and agility that's built into them.
Okay. I want to know, what are the challenges that you face, and how were you able to navigate these challenges in the face of, difficulties, language, funding, artist participation, and all that, transportation? What are these challenges, and how did you navigate these challenges?
I mean, I think that every project in every city comes with its own set of challenges.
Sure.
I mean, the Lagos Biennial, I mean, we I think did a really good job of integrating video into the exhibition, and we had to be very careful and strategic about it, in the sense that the floors of the building that we were using had no electricity, so we had to secure a generator offsite and run a wire up from the back in order to power all these videos, right? And I feel like that's the most trickiest thing for any BNL on the continent, because oftentimes it's less about the power issues, but more about the ability to monitor the videos each day to ensure that they're playing on time. If there are security staff that's overseeing, the gallery, if they don't know how to power on the videos, then that's someone's artwork that isn't, accessible. And I've encountered instances of that, and I always think that that's an opportunity to get it better. I think the internet, integrating, internet-based work into exhibitions on the continent comes with its own challenges. But yeah, I think in some cases these challenges speak to broader sort of infrastructural limitations, and I think that the best way to go about it is to almost conceive of the exhibition with those issues, hurdles in mind, and either address them directly or work around them. So that way the artist's experience isn't diminished, and nor is the public's. I would say also, I think it's great to, be able to integrate resources like QR codes into exhibitions. Oftentimes, at the Art Institute, for example, when we were writing labels for artworks, internally, there's, a limit, right? It's between 70 and 100 words. No one wants to read more than that. They've done studies, and so we tend to keep the writing short. But in some cases, some projects need, an additional interpretive layer in order for audiences to appreciate their complexities. And so there, you put a QR code there and let someone, on the train or on the flight, continue to engage that artwork or the problems or the issues that it's engaging. So I think technology can be really, really effective in those ways. Also the use of iPads in exhibition spaces, where it's fairly common now, but if you have a publication on view and it's in a vitrine and you can only access one page at a time, having an iPad where someone can scroll. Yeah.
So you mentioned some of these challenges. I think that it would take a long time if you had to list each one of these challenges and, then tell us how you navigated them. I just want to know what the leadership ethic has to be for the curator to be able to navigate those challenges.
Yeah.
What's the key element for solving problems in these many different areas? Because when you are here in Chicago, I don't think that powering a generator is your challenge. Maybe the audience being able to access the work or have appreciation. I don't know if that's the challenge, but I'm wondering what, there are different dynamics of challenge in different aspects, whether digital or in some other part of, in African in African spaces or outside of Africa?
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy that you structured the question that way because, when I was talking about some of the challenges earlier, I felt myself becoming a bit concerned because I don't want to give the impression that, Africa and exhibitions and curating is the realm of challenges that need to be overcome, right? There are challenges for sure, but so are challenges in Chicago, and
Everywhere,
in New York,
yeah,
and London. And the challenges tend to be different in some cases. There are instances where, navigating, the bureaucracy of an encyclopedic museum, right, or different issues like that, that makes, doing, exhibitions much more challenging or difficult here in the U.S. In cities on the continent, maybe those hurdles aren't there. And as a consequence, you're able to produce with a greater sense of flexibility and experimentation and spontaneity, right? I think spontaneity is something that isn't as valued as much as it should be when it comes to, putting together exhibitions. And so for the 2019 Lagos Biennale, I mean, we were like making things up on the fly. We were making decisions, very quickly. And there's a spirit there that I think is really important to just the nature of contemporary art, contemporaneity, like being in time, being with time, and being able to have the freedom to experiment.
Yes.
I think that's really, really important. But to your question about leadership, I think you have to be decisive, and you have to be confident and willing to fail. I think a willingness to take risks, and not want to be overly safe. All the people, the curators, thinkers, scholars, artists that I admire, the through line between them all tends to be that there's some willingness to take risks.
Yeah.
And I think that as a curator, as a leader, I think people that you're working with, because every exhibition is highly, highly collaborative, and irrespective of which scale it's occurring on. I think that your collaborators feel confident when if there's one person who's in charge, or if there are three people who are in charge, and they can be decisive and have a clear point of view, that tends to trickle down, I think, everyone else, and hopefully that results in a successful collaboration.
Thank you.
This is such a rich conversation with you, Antawan, and honestly, I've learned a few more things about some of the intricacies of curation and how we approach it. And I think this kind of conversation should continue, not just in this studio or in this space, but also like what you do as a teacher in a class, and I think there needs to be this expansion of the expression that you are kind of giving us here today. And I'm really very grateful that you made yourself available to talk to us, and I really do appreciate it. And I hope Benita also have the same sentiment.
Yeah. Thank you. I have some hot questions. These are hot, short questions.
Okay.
You can give me just yes or no answer.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Do you think curating is a form of diplomacy?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think for curatorial practice to be successful, the most important thing is funding?
No.
Do you think the artwork is more important than the artist in the success of the show? Long pause, no answer.
Wait, do I think that the artwork is more important than the artist?
Okay, let me rephrase.
Okay.
What is most important for the success of the show? The work or the artist?
Well, that's a hard one to say yes or no, because in some cases the artist may not be alive.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's the work that's most important. I think if the artist is alive, I think their care, their confidence, their satisfaction is important. Because I feel like if they're happy, then the work itself can thrive. So yeah.
No, I think I get that and I appreciate it, but I think it's more. This is political in a way, because it's more about like, oh, this work is strong, but like the artist is not. They don't have an MFA. They are not. They don't know how to put out all those didactics for their work and like
for sure. But I mean, there are really, really prominent artists who also make work that's not as strong, right?
Exactly. So in those cases, which one is it for you? Like when, if you have like a big name artist who isn't making like, but
I think that that's a hot answer, or a hot question, because there's so many variables, right? Like, what kind of exhibition is it? Is it a solo show or is it a group show?
Okay.
And is this recent work that's not so good, or is it early work? Because if it's early work, then I feel like that has a different resonance, because you're basically showing something before the artist got to the point where they've made their famous body of work.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'll let you go.
Okay.
But thank you.
Thank you so much.
No,
thank you so
such
much.
a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so
Grateful to
much.
both of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.